Hi there. Welcome to Jacob Nash Meteorology. This is lesson one, an introduction, a kind of quick one, to be honest. But um, if you're not familiar with this channel, I've posted a lot of different videos, but this is the series that I'm starting now. And yes, meteorology, a interest of mine, and I can't tell you that I'm a professional. This is what I say in all my videos, but I can tell you that everything that is displayed in these videos are factual. And if there's ever anything that you believe not to be, I do make mistakes occasionally, but I will do the best I can to teach you this. All right. Well, first thing that I might want to say is why is meteorology important? Well, you might not even be on this if you didn't think that it was. You might just be watching this because you're interested or just because you have to, like maybe you're taking a class where you have to know this stuff, but why might this be important? Kind of a basic question, but from a basic level, I mean, okay, we'd like to know if it's going to rain tomorrow. I mean, it's not just because we're like just curious. I mean, it actually does matter for so many people, whether it rains or not. I can give lots of examples. Someone that is a construction worker may not be able to work on a job site if there is rain, that you can't make cuts outside. That's a great example. Anyone involved in sports might get rained out. Musicians might get rained out. Any outdoor activities, any outdoor jobs, and it impacts everyone. Some people in a minor way, some in a more major way. What should I wear? I mean, a lot of people, that's important to know what you're going to wear. Like for me, I have uh, a condition called Raynaud's, and I definitely need to know the temperature so I can tell how heavy of clothes I need to wear. Because for me, it could actually be significant if I go out when not wearing the correct things. Um, But for other people, I mean, same thing. Like you don't want to be wearing sweatshirt if it's hot or wearing a short sleeve shirt if it's cold. Obviously. I mean, this is just obvious. Are my tomatoes from Lowe's gonna die? Another thing like that, like I mean, just out of convenience, it's important. If we didn't have this field of study, I mean, everything would just seem random. Like, oh, I don't know. But I have to say, what's the most important, in my opinion, and I think a lot of people's opinions, is this kind of stuff. Both of those pictures are taken in the United States within the last 20 years. Um, the picture on the left right here is damage from Hurricane Harvey, which hit in 2017. The picture on the right is the damage from the Joplin, Missouri tornado of 2011. These events were not too long ago, and there have been many others that have happened in the recent days, and you just don't know what's going to happen. I mean, we haven't had, um, not every year do we have super terrible events like these, but you don't know. They could happen. You can't know so far in advance. So it is really important that we study this. Well, in the first place, what is meteorology? Well, the formal definition is it's just the study of the atmosphere and the very processes that cause weather. That's what we'll learn about. Now, whereas climatologists would look at the long-term processes or averages, we look at the short-term or predictions. So climatologists, I mean, they study the climate, and the climate is long-term. Like obviously what's going on, we're looking at the big picture, we're looking at averages, we're looking at relationships um, throughout time. But meteorologists, we're thinking about what's going to happen soon. That doesn't mean we don't look back on things that have happened, but we are mostly thinking about what is the prediction for a hurricane in the next 5 days. Um, what is the possibility of severe weather within the next 2 days in any given area? The United States is, in particular, a very weather active country. I mean, we get a lot of things here. Um, 70% of the world's tornadoes occur in the Great Plains. So many hurricanes have the potential to hit the United States, although, of course, they hit other countries as well. But we are definitely a country that needs to be aware of weather. Which is more important, short term or long term? That is not a question that I put on there that I would say has an actual answer. Both are really important. Um, and that can apply to other parts of life too. Anyways, like, is it important that I think about what I need to do today or what I need to do in a week? Like, you you got to prioritize, and this um respect is that's what you have to do too. Like, it's important for us to know what's going to happen soon, but it's also important that we listen to the climatologists so that we can recognize trends, and that can help us also predict. Now, which would answer which questions? I mean, this is probably seems pretty obvious, but meteorologists are going to answer the questions, will it rain tomorrow? How hot will it be? Will you be on TV? Well, that's a common misconception. So a lot of people don't even know what meteorologists are. Like even some people that are intelligent, like somehow just aren't super familiar with the field. I'm not quite sure how that could be, but I have run across various examples. And anyone that does hear often will ask, "Will you be on TV? Is that what you want to do?" That's what a lot of people might be asked, and like that's not the only job there is. And in fact, as we'll look soon, that's like the small percentage that will do that. Why are you always wrong? Have you ever wondered why, like, oftentimes the predictions aren't even, they might not even be correct? Like, how come they say it's not going to rain and then it does? Or vice versa? How come, whatever? Like, how come they said 2024 was going to be a super active hurricane season and so far it hasn't been super active? Well, the answer to that question is the fact that meteorologists are seldom the ones that are actually doing the mathematics to provide our predictions. It's computers since the 60s. And, you know, in the early days when we did actually try to do it by hand, it was completely inaccurate. So it's computers that are mostly doing these calculations. And computers, even though it's 2024, they're still not perfect. And that's the reason. We're the ones that analyze the data and um, kind of combine the different sources. I mean, that's what the National Weather Service does. We look at all the different sources to make our best estimate, and we provide that data to the public. But we are not usually the ones that are actually doing the specific calculations to say, is it going to rain this evening in New York? The climatologists, they would know, what is the record temperature in July for New York? Is climate change real? Is this the worst heat wave ever? I mean, anything that's long term. But um, why are you always wrong? Like people might ask them that too, but probably more the meteorologists. So what is changing in the meteorology field? A lot of meteorology jobs used to be computer jobs considering modeling. Modeling incorrectly spelled, apologize for that. Eh. Um, I do that oftentimes with two L's for some reason. I don't know why, but uh so yeah, like I said, TV jobs are really the minority. It's the minority of people that want to do it or the people that actually end up doing it because it's not really super high demand for that necessarily. So we used to have so many people like behind computers, looking at data and but now in the last few years, and I really mean the last few years, everything is more hands-on. And we're looking more at the big weather events rather than like your 4-day forecast. Um, our severe weather events, and we are collaborating with other groups like emergency staff, trying to limit damage and loss. We're providing information so people can be better prepared for what's coming. So why is the change? Well, I would argue two reasons. The first is that, well, as you probably know, computers have really improved um, drastically in the last 20 years. I would argue maybe even the last 5 years. A lot has changed in just the 2020s so far. We know that we have so much more AI than we used to. I mean, you're seeing that everywhere, and from my knowledge, I really didn't see that too much until about this year or maybe last year. But computers are getting smarter. We don't need as many people doing the jobs. So yeah, they're kind of taking the jobs. The other reason is that, well, here's the thing. There is obviously controversy, sorry, over climate change. I don't know what the statistics are on like who believes what, but honestly, if you're going to study this, you will have to recognize that there have been changes for sure. There's no denying it. We have proof of that there is climate change. And I will talk about this more in a different video, not to get too off track, but um, the climate change is actually a process that has occurred through history. We go through different periods, glacial and interglacial, but there has been a significant difference that can be noted around since maybe the 1890s, that's just exponential. And I'm not going to get into specifics right now, but this does result in worse weather events. So we severe weather events have been on the rise in the last definitely 40 years. There hasn't been too significant of a change in the last 10 years or something, but definitely since the 2000s. So obviously, what I'm talking about in one aspect is, I mean, we're going to talk more about this. I've already said that a couple times, but as you can see, I don't know. This isn't even the best graphic for me to show because it would be better to show you if it went back to like 1800. But you can see that there is a rise in the parts per million of atmospheric CO2. And yes, it's increasing to an extent that we need to be aware of. Um, Here are the costliest tropical cyclones to impact the United States. And I'm not only saying the United States to like exclude the rest of the world that gets impacted by these events, but I'm saying United States to make it the most relevant because I assume most of the people watching this are from the United States, like I am. But here are some of the worst, or in terms of cost, cyclones to impact the United States. And just so you know, the cost values are based on the 2024 adjusted cost because we know, we've had significant cost changes in the last couple years. But the worst, obviously, as you might expect, was Hurricane Katrina that hit in 2005. And you might not know this, but it was actually Category 3 when it hit. Um, 200 billion. Hurricane Harvey, I already mentioned earlier, 2017. 2017 was not a good year. As you can see, there are three hurricanes that are the worst that were in 2017: Harvey, Maria, Irma. Hurricane Ian, you might remember, 2022. I actually went out into the storm for that, but not in Florida. That was not a good one either. Hurricane Sandy, you might have heard of, Ida, Irma, Andrew, Ike, Ivan. But as you can see, most of these hurricanes were in the last 10, 15 years. A couple weren't, but that's something important to note, which is why we're having some changes. Now, something that I must say, I should have said before, these videos are going to be a little bit extensive. Um, and I don't mind if you think that they're too long or I ramble on too much, but I'm passionate about this, so I just like to share with others that may be. So no problem if you don't like these videos or don't want to watch them. But here are the past six hurricane seasons, and we're going to just look at what we have here. And I'm not showing you this to like have a trend because 6 years isn't enough to show a trend. But I just want to show you what we have going on here. So 2018, that was a pretty crazy season. The two hurricanes that were pretty bad that year were Hurricane Florence and Michael. And I'm speaking of in terms of the United States once again. Um, both I got impacted by, um, and because at the time I lived in South Carolina, so that wasn't so good. I definitely remember that. 2019, we had some pretty bad ones that year, but Dorian was the main one. Now, here's something important. Just because our hurricane was like a high category doesn't mean that it actually was one that impacted land. There are some that just stay out in the ocean, category 5, don't even do anything. 2020, that was like a crazy hurricane season. If you're not aware, it's the only hurricane season in history that we had to go into Greek letters. And in history, we only have named hurricane seasons since the 60s officially. I say officially. Um, so, we're not going off of like so many years, but it's since the 60s, this is the only year that we ever had to do that. And we haven't had to since. Um, but that was pretty crazy because it's the most named storms. Now, if you notice back to this, 2020, none of the hurricanes that year actually were the worst. Um, so it wasn't, there were bad ones. Laura was bad for Louisiana. And there were other ones that hit that were not good also. But it was just kind of interesting to look at. Hurricane season 2021 was a little bit more laid back. Hurricane Sam, I believe, was the strongest hurricane that year, but it was not very impactful. 2022, we already said Hurricane Ian was the major one that year that wasn't good. 2023, just last year, that one was, we had Hurricane Lee that was really strong, but it stayed out in the Atlantic. And hurricane season 2024, there have only been five named storms so far, which is a little bit unusual for this time of year. Normally we're higher than that. Like right now, when I'm making this video, it's September 4th. All right, right here we're to the F's. Okay, I guess that's about the same then. Over here though, we about the same. Um, Here though we're at O, but like I said, that was an unusual one. Here we're at L. Here we're at D. So not based on some of these that we've had, but sometimes, quite often, we've had more storms by this point. But September and October are really the some of the months that have the worst storms. Okay, the last thing that I'll talk about is National Weather Service. I've already talked about them some, but they are the ones that issue our watches, warnings, and advisories, and they are also the only entity that's allowed to. You can get in really big trouble if you issue a watch or warning, like if you happen to just post on Instagram, all right, there's a severe thunderstorm warning for Bob County or whatever. Like if you can't do that, like that's actually illegal. You could get in big trouble if you do that. Um, but the National Weather Service is a very good resource, and the most accurate usually, not always, but the most accurate usually, in terms compared to other sources that you might look at for your weather. Um, weather.gov, that's how you get to them. .gov, that's how you know it's official. Here's something that was a little bit before I made this video. If here's the watches and warnings currently. Um, 2042, what does that mean? Hopefully you know your military time. That would mean 8:42 p.m. And that's 4 hours ahead of Eastern time. So that's meant 4:42 p.m. for the Eastern time zone. And obviously you might not be in that part of the United States, but that's where I am. Um, and that's the part of the United States that has the most weather concerns anyways. So we have right now not that many watches and warnings. We do have flood watches over here. You can see the breakdown, some heat advisories, warnings. Um, but anyways, that's all I have to say. I know that was a long introduction. I'll try to be more concise in the future, but meteorology is definitely, like I said, a passion of mine, and I'm looking forward to making more videos and sharing what I know. Thank you for watching.